The reactor was going to blow in under 2 minutes, and every alien engineer on that dock was standing frozen, watching the countdown like it was a religious ceremony instead of a death sentence. My name is Cole Ferris, and I fix things for a living on a rusted trading station at the edge of space that humans are barely allowed to visit, let alone own. That night, I was elbow deep in a busted coolant pump when the alarm started screaming through the whole station. I dropped my tools and ran toward the noise, because that is just what I do. Curiosity has gotten me into more trouble than anything else in my life. What I found docked at Bay 11 was a royal shuttle from the Vale Ascendancy, one of the biggest powers in this part of the galaxy. Its hull was glowing an angry orange near the engine core, and a crowd of tall insect-like officials stood outside the door, arguing in clicks and whistles instead of doing anything useful. I pushed through them without thinking twice. Behind the cracked viewport, I could see 2 figures inside, a tall, regal woman with shining chitin armor, and a smaller one curled on the floor, coughing from the smoke. That smaller one was young, maybe a teenager by human standards. One of the officials grabbed my arm and hissed something about protocol, about how no outsider is permitted to touch royal machinery. I shook him off. "Your protocol is about to turn this whole dock into a crater," I said. "Move, or lose an arm helping me." I do not think he understood a word of it, but the tone got through. He stepped back. I found the emergency vent, which every Vale engineer apparently refuses to open manually, because doing so is considered disrespectful to the royal vessel. I did not care about respect. I cared about the timer ticking down to 0. I grabbed the release lever with my bare hands, and it burned through my gloves instantly. I gritted my teeth and pulled anyway, again and again, until the mechanism gave way, and the core vented its heat out into open space, instead of into that ship. The screaming alarms cut off, the glowing hull dimmed back to its normal color. My hands felt like they had been dipped in fire, but the ship, and everyone inside it, was safe. The door hissed open, and the tall woman in armor stepped out first, holding the young one steady on her arm. Her eyes locked on me immediately, sharp and calculating, taking in my station uniform, my burned hands, and the small crowd of her own officials standing uselessly behind me. "You," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made the whole hallway go quiet. "You touched the royal core." "I put out a fire," I said. "Didn't realize I needed a permission slip for that." She did not answer right away. Instead, she looked at the young one beside her, who was staring at me with wide, curious eyes, still catching her breath. That was the moment everything in my life changed, though I did not know it yet. I found out soon enough that the woman in armor was Veskal, sovereign queen of the Vale Ascendancy, and the young one I had pulled from that smoking wreck was her only daughter, Ithrin. In Vale society, the royal bloodline is treated as sacred beyond anything I could compare it to. Losing Ithrin would not have just been a personal tragedy for the queen. It would have shattered the political order of an entire empire. Station medics wrapped my hands, while a dozen Vale officials whispered nervously outside the door, clearly panicking about what to do with a human who had just saved their queen's daughter. I overheard enough to understand the problem. Humanity was not exactly respected out here. We were loud, unpredictable, and considered too short-lived and too reckless to be taken seriously by older empires. The idea that one of us had just outsmarted their sacred engineering did not sit well with some of them. I expected a quiet payout and a quick goodbye, maybe a polite thank you, and a nudge toward the nearest exit before things got politically awkward for the empire. Instead, the queen requested a private audience with me the very next morning. I walked into that meeting room with bandaged hands and zero expectations, mostly hoping they would at least reimburse me for my ruined gloves. Veskal sat across from me, calm and unreadable, with Ithrin standing quietly at her side, watching me with an intensity that felt strange coming from someone so young. "In your culture," the queen began, "I understand debts are settled with currency." "Usually," I said. "Sometimes with pizza too, but currency works." She did not smile at that. Vale humor apparently ran differently. "In my culture," she continued, "a life debt of this magnitude cannot be settled that way. What you did was not simply save a life. You preserved the continuation of an entire bloodline, and with it, the stability of billions of lives connected to that bloodline. Currency would be an insult. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. I had assumed I was walking into a reward. Now it felt like I was walking into something much bigger, something I did not fully understand yet. "So what exactly are we talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The Queen studied me for a long moment before she spoke again, and when she did, her words landed like a shockwave that would eventually ripple across half the galaxy. "You will be granted blood kinship into the royal hive line," she said. "You will hold the formal title of Warden of the Ascendancy, and my daughter will name you her sworn protector, a bond recognized across every system under our rule." For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard her through the ringing in my ears from the alarms the night before. "I'm sorry," I said. "Blood kinship, like family." "Yes. With royalty, alien royalty. Yes." I looked at Ithrin, half expecting her to laugh and say this was some kind of test, some strange alien joke I was not in on. Instead, she stepped forward, her expression completely sincere. "You did not hesitate," she said quietly. "Everyone else stood outside arguing about rules while I was choking on smoke. You didn't ask permission, you just acted." There was something in the way she said it that made the whole absurd situation feel suddenly very real and very personal. I learned quickly that what the Queen was offering had never happened before in the history of her empire. No outsider, let alone a human, had ever been granted hive kinship. It was not just a symbolic gesture, it came with real legal standing inside one of the most powerful governments in known space. It meant I would have a voice in matters that affected entire star systems. It meant humanity, a species most empires barely acknowledged, would suddenly have someone sitting inside the inner circle of the Veil Ascendancy. I will admit, for about 30 seconds I thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Other empires were not going to be thrilled watching a human get elevated like this. I imagined diplomats across the galaxy choking on their drinks when the news reached them. I imagined our own tiny human colonies suddenly getting a lot more attention than they were used to. Some of it good, some of it definitely not. But then I looked at Ithrin again, standing there with soot still faintly staining her collar, watching me with that same earnest expression, waiting for an answer that clearly mattered more to her than the politics swirling around it. "Why does this matter so much to you personally?" I asked her. "Because everyone around me follows rules built to protect power," she said. "You broke every one of them to protect a person. I want someone like that standing beside me, not behind a title. I am not usually the type to get pulled in by a good speech. Years of fixing broken equipment on a backwater station will make a person practical instead of sentimental." But something about the way she said it, plain and direct, without any of the political weight her mother carried, made the decision easier than it had any right to be. "All right," I said. "I accept. But I wanted on record that I did not ask for any of this. I just did not want to watch a kid choke to death on smoke." The Queen studied me for a long moment, and for the first time since I had met her, something that might have been the beginning of respect crossed her expression. "Noted," she said. "History rarely remembers the reasons behind an action, only the result." Word spread fast after that. Within days, other empires were sending confused and cautious messages to the Veil Ascendancy, trying to understand how a human mechanic from a nowhere trading station had ended up with a formal seat inside one of the most powerful governments in the galaxy. Some called it reckless, some called it dangerous. A few called it the smartest move the Veil had ever made, since it meant humanity's reckless, rule-breaking nature was now tied directly to their empire instead of working against it. As for me, I still fix things for a living, though the workshop looks a little different these days, and the visitors are a lot stranger. My hands healed, mostly. Ithrin still asks me questions about human customs that make no sense to her, and I still ask her questions about Veil customs that make no sense to me. It is a strange arrangement, built entirely on one impulsive decision made in under 2 minutes with a burning lever in my hands. I never set out to change how the galaxy saw humanity. I just could not stand there and watch someone die because of a rulebook. Turns out, that is exactly the kind of thing that shocks an entire galaxy into paying attention. And honestly, looking back, I would pull that lever again without a second thought.